Then came the day that I lost my control over death. I was 8 years old the evening of the Halloween costume contest at Windward Mall, only 4 blocks from my house. Like many malls, this one was 2 stories, with an open floor plan that allowed people on the higher floor to look down at the action below. I spotted my father dozing on a bench at the food court. "Dad!" I yelled from the second story. "Pretzel, Dad! Pretzel!" As I shouted and waved my arms, I saw out of the corner of my eye a little girl climb up to where the escalator met the second story railing. As I watched, she tipped over the edge and fell 30 feet, landing face first on a laminate counter with a sickening thud. "My baby! No, my baby!" shrieked her mother, barreling down the escalator, violently shoving mall patrons aside as the crowd swarmed forward. To this day, I have never heard anything so otherworldly as that woman's screams. My knees buckled, and I looked down to where my father had been sitting, but he was gone with the surge of the crowd. Where he had been sitting, there was only an empty bench. That thud, the noise of the girl's body hitting the laminate, would repeat in my mind over and over, dull thud after dull thud. Today, the thuds might be called a symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder, but back then, the noises were just the drumbeat of my childhood. "Hey kid, don't you try to jump down too. Just take the escalator, okay?" my dad said, trying to be lighthearted with a goofy grin. I didn't think it was funny at all. I think my eyes told him nothing was funny anymore. I sat up until dawn that night, afraid to turn out the lights. It was as if the little girl had fallen into a pit of fear in the center of my body. There had been no violence or gore. I had seen worse on television. This was reality. Until that night, I hadn't truly understood that I was going to die, that everyone was going to die. I didn't know who else had that debilitating piece of information. If others did possess this knowledge, I wondered, how could they possibly live with it? The next morning, my parents found me huddled on the couch in the living room under several blankets, my eyes wide. They took me for chocolate chip pancakes at the Koa House restaurant. We never spoke about the incident again.
Carrie Hosmer. Okay, so the first time I saw a dead body, I was in high school. I was a junior in high school. I think I was still 16 though. And it was another kid in my school. He was a sophomore, but I think he was our age. He just stayed behind a year. And he and his girlfriend borrowed a friend's car. Guy he knew at school, and didn't ask, but got his car or whatever. I'm not sure how that part happened, but they went out for a ride. And when they got on the highway, they sideswiped, clipped a guy's car, and the guy chased them, which was really stupid. But he got off the highway onto this little windy, narrow 2-lane road that connects my hometown with the highway. And the guy chased him down, and he lost control of the car, and he hit a tree. He went through the windshield and hit the tree himself. He was killed on site at the scene. His girlfriend was injured, but she survived. And my best friend at the time, she wanted to go to the wake to see this. And I didn't really know him that well. I just knew him from around school, but I didn't really know him. And I really didn't want to go, but she bugged me and made me go with her. So we went. And it was, it just looked, it wasn't gross or anything like that to me, but his appearance, the fact that they had an open casket after he'd gone through all of that trauma, and I know that they did the best that they could, but when you have to kind of piece somebody's head and face back together and then cover it with makeup, it didn't look good. And instead of like natural color, it looked really kind of pasty and white. And I don't know if that's whatever they had to use or the foundation, but it just looked so bad. And I was like, I can't even. I'm like, I paid my respects and I'm like, I'm going to go wait in another room. It was just really horrible. And I'm like, I don't want to see people like that. I would rather remember people how I knew them. And I've gone to other wakes and stuff since then, and family friends or my parents' friends, things like that. And I usually don't ever go in and see. The only time that I made an exception was my dad, when my dad died, because he was young and because it was so sudden and unexpected. And even though I'd just seen him that morning, when I got home from work, he was gone. And we just had a really small, just family only, and a few close friends, just like the sort of wake reception was just in the room with him. But I was kind of glad I did, because it was just that, I think, that suddenness. And in that case, he looked like himself. And I was glad that I did at that time. But then when my mom died, I'd just seen her a couple weeks before, but she was 93 and had lived a long life. I just prefer to remember them how they were. Well, I think that with the boy, Kevin was his name, I didn't really know him so I didn't really have that connection. But a couple years before that, my family, my dad's best friend was an aunt and uncle and cousins. Their youngest, who was 2 years younger than me, he died when I was 14 and he was 12 of leukemia. He was close to my own age, and we used to, we'd see them in the summers. They'd come stay with us for a month, or we'd get down and see them. And I knew him, and he was a friend and really close, and we all played together and stuff. And that, I think, that really affected me more. I really wanted to go with them. I wanted to go to the funeral, but they wouldn't let me go. And they just went, really. And so I think that was my first experience with death, other than a pet, that really kind of brought death home to me, that someone that young could lose his life so quickly, more so than the first time I actually saw a dead body. As you get older, you think about people that you know in your life, or that you have known, people that die. And the thing that I think about death is that, and this may be really weird and maybe other people don't think about this, and it's only recently that I've thought about it, is that I think about in terms of my family, and my mom and dad are gone now, and it's just my siblings and I, but we're very close as a family. And we really had a really great family, and we had a lot of great experiences that we shared together, and just had a really good childhood. And I think about all those things that we did and those experiences we had, and I think when we're gone, just all of that, nobody will remember those things. That's the thing that I think about. I mean, you and my nieces and nephews will remember for a certain period of time. Nobody remembers that. There's no one else that has those memories. And my mom used to talk about that, about her grandparents and how close they were. And then there was nobody else that remembered those things but her. And I think being the last person to carry all those memories of your family is hard. And then when you're gone, it's I don't know, to me that just seems really sad.
Jillian Clark. So I've been to cadaver labs twice. I've been to the one here at Stevens, which is a smaller cadaver lab. There was only 2 cadavers in it. And then I went to one at Cleveland University, which was bigger. I think there was 6 cadavers at that one. Since I am involved in biology classes through anatomy labs, I got to kind of see the bodies that have already been used. But for the students who are in those higher level anatomy classes, they use the cadaver labs to dissect bodies. I think the first thing that you really notice is the fact that it stinks. It stinks really bad. It smells like the worst anatomy lab you've ever been in. You wear a mask, of course, but it sticks on your hands. You smell it on you for days. And then I think the next thing is the whoa, that's a body hits you. But it doesn't really look like a body because it's kind of mutilated and torn apart, and the organs are taken out and the tendons are all separated. Organs kind of feel like hardened clay. They have this weird fibrous meat look to them when you cut them open. I don't know, the brain's just something that's so abstract in life, and then when it's in death, it's not. It's very lifeless, concrete, small even. And it's weird being able to think about the fact that somebody was once in that brain and it had a function, and now you can see the function in all the separated lobes, but it's not doing that function anymore.
That's wild. I'm sorry. I keep saying that's crazy. Okay.
I had a friend kill himself my freshman year, and I attended his funeral, and it was really weird because they had an open casket funeral. And I thought that was really kind of gross because they invited a bunch of high school students. I don't know, it was weird. That was the first time actually seeing a dead body and connecting it and knowing that person. And that stuck with me a long time because it's just I don't know, death, it's very finite. You don't ever see them again. The second time I ever saw a dead body was my great-grandmother. That one also stuck with me for a while. That was like the first time I felt close to one of them, and like I wanted to see the body. For like a sense of closure, I guess. But I think I am a very morbid person. I think about death a lot just because it's been around me so much. I think those experiences really stuck with me. I mean, I'm comforted by the fact that one day I will die, but also it's something that I think about a lot because it's the biggest mystery of life, I think.
My name is Jamie Todd. So first time I ever saw a dead body, I was 17. It was at my grandma's funeral. I had never had a close experience with death before. I don't think ever. Once when I was 12, some kid I used to do theater with got shot. That was traumatizing, but it was nobody that I was super close with. But then when it came to my grandma, it wasn't really sad per se, because you knew it was going to happen. I don't know if that makes it any better. All I really remember from the funeral is that it was a great big Catholic church, kind of scary. I remember walking down the aisle, just walking towards the open casket that supposedly held my grandma. When I walked up and I looked at her body, there's about 15 seconds of doubt. Just, I'm looking at a random old lady. Some dead body with a ton of makeup on. It smells like covered up formaldehyde. I think after staring at her for 15, 20 seconds, I was like, oh shit, this is my grandma. I didn't cry at her funeral. I sang and everything. I think that's kind of made me numb to it because I wasn't there to grieve. I was there to help everyone else grieve. It was one of those situations where I kind of felt like I was just gracing my toe with death. I mean, yeah, I was sad my grandma died, but it wasn't real. Funeral is not something I was used to. In all honesty, it sucks to say, but I didn't hurt that much. 2 years later, my grandpa died. That one actually sucked because I saw him die. Last time I saw him was 2 weeks before he passed away. We didn't have a funeral. I never saw his dead body or anything, but I think it's worse to watch somebody die than to see the dead body. I think the most I've had contact with a dead body is animals. I was that kid who, when my childhood dog died, I went with my dad to watch her get put down. And it wasn't, it was horrible. I was 8. It sucked, but I think in that case, it's poor choice of word, but it was more rewarding in that way, knowing that I love this being, this person, this animal, whatever, but it's instead of not seeing them die or not experiencing that firsthand, at least in my experience, it makes me feel less connected to them, which sounds horrible in a way, but having to actually visualize it makes it more real. I think that's why I didn't cry at my grandma's funeral and why I didn't really understand it was her. Last time I saw her was 3 months before then. So when I saw her, she was okay. She had cancer, but she was still kicking it. It was one of those things where my parents didn't want me to see her dying. I don't know. I guess in a way that made the funeral less of a funeral and more of just, hi, here's a dead person. We're gonna mourn her now. Now we're gonna eat some cake in this church basement. That kind of solidified me not being afraid of death anymore. That was my biggest fear, especially in high school. Coming face to face with a dead person just kind of makes it go away. Like, I still think about it the same amount, but instead of like being anxious about it and throwing myself into a panic because the thought crossed my mind, I'm going to die. It's now when I think that, it's just like, okay, cool.